In 2018, whispers began circulating among flight crews stationed at Dubai International Airport. A secret so explosive that those who dared speak of it risked their careers, reputations, and even lives. It wasn't just gossip, it was a bombshell buried beneath layers of privilege, power, and silence. What started as rumors about a high-ranking Dubai sheikh and his forbidden affair with a female pilot soon spiraled into something far darker, a deadly scandal involving betrayal, disease, and cover-ups that reached the highest echelons of society, and nearly toppled a monarchy. But this isn't just another tabloid headline or clickbait story. This is what happened behind closed doors, the kind of truth no one wanted you to hear. Only here will you find the exact details no news outlet has dared to fully uncover. So grab a seat, stay with me, and let's dive deeper together. Because by the end of this, you'll understand why she never stood a chance, and why the world may never know the full extent of what really happened. Don't forget to subscribe, because stories like these, you might not see me again after this. To truly understand how this scandal unfolded, and why it went unnoticed for so long, we need to rewind a bit. Picture Dubai in 2018, a city that seemed untouchable, gleaming with ambition and excess. Skyscrapers pierced the clouds, luxury cars lined the streets, and private jets zipped across skies painted gold by desert sunsets. On the surface, everything appeared flawless, a modern-day utopia built on wealth and innovation. But beneath the polished veneer lay cracks, hidden from view unless you knew where to look. And Captain Layla Ahmed? She wasn't looking for trouble when she first crossed paths with Sheikh Tariq al-Mansoori. In fact, if anything, she was trying to prove herself in an industry that rarely made space for women like her. Born in Cairo but raised in Dubai, Layla had always been driven, some might say obsessively so. Her father, a former airline mechanic, instilled in her a love for aviation from a young age. By the time she earned her wings at 24, she'd already sacrificed countless weekends, holidays, and relationships to chase her dream. To outsiders, she seemed invincible, a woman who defied stereotypes and soared above limitations. But inside, she carried the weight of expectations, her own, her family's, and society's. It was during a routine private charter flight that Layla met Sheikh Tariq. At first glance, he embodied everything synonymous with Dubai's elite. Charm masked by authority, confidence bordering on arrogance, and wealth that rendered him untouchable. Yet there was something magnetic about him, a charisma that could disarm even the most guarded individuals. During their initial interaction, Tariq complimented Layla's professionalism, asking thoughtful questions about her career and aspirations. It felt harmless enough, even flattering. After all, how often does someone of his stature take genuine interest in someone like her? What started as polite conversation evolved into late-night texts under the guise of professional networking. Tariq praised Layla's work ethic, offered advice on navigating corporate politics, and occasionally shared anecdotes from his own life. For Layla, these exchanges became a lifeline, a rare opportunity to connect with someone who seemed genuinely interested in her success. Over time, however, the boundaries blurred. Texts grew longer, topics more personal, and intentions less clear. Before she realized it, Layla was no longer just a pilot. She was entangled in something far more complicated. Friends noticed changes almost immediately. Colleagues remarked on how distracted Layla seemed during flights, her usual precision giving way to uncharacteristic errors. Close friends tried to intervene, gently probing about her frequent absences and cryptic excuses. When pressed, Layla dismissed their concerns, insisting everything was fine. Looking back now, it's easy to see she wasn't protecting them, she was protecting herself. Because deep down, she knew the truth. Once you step into the orbit of someone like Sheikh Tariq al-Mansoori, there's no turning back. Then came the moment that changed everything. Layla received a call one evening, a summons rather than a request, to meet Tariq at a secluded villa outside the city. The location alone should have raised red flags, remote, heavily guarded, accessible only via a private road. But desperation has a way of clouding judgment, especially when mixed with flattery and promises of opportunity. When she arrived, Tariq greeted her warmly, pouring champagne and praising her achievements. He spoke passionately about expanding his influence in the aviation industry, hinting at potential partnerships that could elevate Layla's career to unprecedented heights. It sounded too good to be true, and yet, she believed him. What happened next remains shrouded in ambiguity. According to sources close to Layla, The night took a darker turn after hours of drinking and conversation. Details are fragmented, pieced together from overheard snippets and second-hand accounts. What is certain, however, is that this marked the beginning of a pattern, one characterized by secrecy, manipulation, and coercion. Layla returned home shaken but silent, unwilling, or perhaps unable, to confront what had transpired. Weeks turned into months, and the relationship grew increasingly toxic. Layla found herself trapped in a cycle of hope and despair, oscillating between moments of elation, when Tariq showered her with gifts and promises, and crushing disappointment, when he disappeared without explanation. Friends describe her as a shadow of her former self, withdrawn, anxious, constantly checking her phone for messages that never came. It wasn't until she began experiencing mysterious health issues that the full extent of the situation became apparent. The diagnosis hit like a freight train. HIV positive. 2 letters carrying enough weight to shatter anyone's sense of control. For Layla, the revelation triggered a cascade of emotions: shock, denial, anger, and ultimately, resolve. Pilots are trained to handle emergencies methodically, assess the situation, gather information, chart a course forward. Layla approached her condition with the same discipline, requesting medical leave and retreating from public view. But as she processed the implications, fragments of suspicion began creeping into her thoughts. Could her diagnosis be linked to someone specific? Someone closer than she cared to admit? Her investigation started quietly, almost accidentally. A misplaced receipt here, an anonymous tip there, it all added up to a chilling realization: she wasn't the only one. Rumors swirled within elite circles about other women silenced through payouts or threats. Desperate for answers, Layla confronted Tariq in a series of tense encounters documented only through hearsay. According to insiders, Tariq denied responsibility outright, accusing Layla of seeking attention or financial gain. Yet his denials rang hollow against mounting evidence suggesting reckless behavior spanning years. As tensions escalated, so did efforts to contain the fallout. Powerful figures intervened, urging Layla to sign non-disclosure agreements promising anonymity in exchange for monetary compensation. Some appealed to patriotism, framing her silence as a service to the nation's image. Others resorted to coercion, leveraging her career and family ties as leverage points. Whatever methods were used, one thing became painfully clear. Layla was fighting not just against Tariq but against an entire system designed to protect its own. And then, nothing. Or so it seemed. Months passed without updates, leading many to assume the case had been swept under the rug like countless others before it. That is, until a whistleblower stepped forward with documents revealing shocking details about the extent of the cover-up. Emails, bank transfers, surveillance footage, all pointing toward a coordinated effort involving government officials, corporate executives, and influential families. Suddenly, the stakes weren't just personal anymore. They were global. Which brings us back to today, and to you. Because understanding what really happened requires more than passive observation. It demands participation, reflection, and accountability. As we peel back each layer of this story, ask yourself, how often do we ignore warning signs when they don't directly affect us? How complicit are we in systems that prioritize image over integrity? The whistleblower's emergence marked a turning point, not just for Layla Ahmed's story but for Dubai itself. For years, rumors had swirled about a shadowy network operating beneath the city's glittering surface. But no one dared to step forward, until now. What this whistleblower revealed wasn't just damning evidence against Sheikh Tariq al-Mansoori. It was a blueprint of complicity that implicated some of Dubai's most powerful figures. And unlike whispers or speculation, these documents were impossible to ignore. At first glance, the materials appeared mundane, a collection of emails, financial records, and surveillance logs. But as investigators pieced them together, a chilling picture emerged. Take, for instance, a series of transactions labeled charitable donations, funneled through offshore accounts controlled by members of Tariq's inner circle. On paper, they seemed innocuous enough. In reality, they funded hush money payments to women who'd crossed paths with the Sheikh under similar circumstances as Layla. One name stood out repeatedly: Sheikha Amina Al-Farid, Tariq's wife. While publicly portraying herself as a philanthropist and advocate for women's rights, Amina played a pivotal role in silencing potential threats to her husband's reputation. Her involvement added another layer of complexity to an already convoluted web of deceit. But perhaps the most explosive revelation came in the form of medical reports. These weren't isolated cases of HIV transmission. They were part of a pattern spanning years. According to leaked documents, Tariq had knowingly engaged in unprotected relationships despite being aware of his condition. When confronted privately, he allegedly dismissed concerns, claiming his status granted him immunity from consequences. "They're replaceable," one email reportedly quoted him saying about the women affected. The cold indifference captured in those words sent shockwaves through anyone who read them. As details trickled into public consciousness, outrage spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with hashtags like #JusticeForLayla and #ExposeTheTruth, amplifying calls for accountability. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, demanding transparency and reform. Even international organizations weighed in, condemning the systemic failures that allowed such abuses to persist unchecked. Yet amidst the chaos, one question lingered: why had it taken so long for the truth to come out? Part of the answer lies in Dubai's unique cultural and political landscape. As a hub of wealth and influence, the city operates on principles of discretion and loyalty, qualities often weaponized to suppress dissent. Those brave enough to speak up risked not only legal repercussions but also social ostracism. Fear kept many silent, even when faced with overwhelming evidence. But fear alone couldn't explain the scale of the cover-up. To understand that, we must examine the mechanisms designed to protect Dubai's elite, and the lengths to which they'll go to preserve their image. One key player in this system was Dr. Elias Rahman, a prominent physician whose clientele included some of the region's wealthiest individuals. According to whistleblower testimony, Rahman specialized in managing sensitive health issues discreetly. For years, he allegedly falsified medical records, issuing clean bills of health to high-profile patients while concealing diagnoses that could tarnish reputations. His involvement extended beyond mere compliance. Internal memos suggested he actively participated in brokering deals to silence victims, ensuring their cooperation through intimidation or financial incentives. When questioned later, Rahman denied wrongdoing, citing patient confidentiality. However, leaked audio recordings told a different story, one where ethics took a backseat to profit and power. Meanwhile, Layla Ahmed found herself caught in the eye of the storm. Initially hesitant to involve authorities, she eventually agreed to testify after learning of the broader implications. Her decision came at great personal cost. Threats poured in daily, ranging from anonymous messages warning her to stay quiet to overt attempts at sabotage. Colleagues distanced themselves, fearing association with someone embroiled in controversy. Even her family urged caution, torn between supporting her quest for justice and protecting their own safety. Despite these challenges, Layla persevered, driven by a sense of duty not just to herself but to others who'd suffered in silence. Her courage inspired others to come forward. Slowly but surely, more voices joined the chorus, each sharing their own harrowing experiences. There was Fatima Khalil, a flight attendant coerced into signing a non-disclosure agreement after discovering she'd contracted hepatitis B from an unnamed royal passenger. Then there was Nadia Hassan, a hotel manager pressured into resignation following accusations of misconduct, a smear campaign orchestrated to discredit her claims of sexual harassment. Together, these stories formed a mosaic of exploitation, revealing how deeply entrenched abuse had become within certain echelons of society. Yet exposing the truth proved only half the battle. Holding perpetrators accountable required navigating a labyrinth of legal and diplomatic hurdles. Diplomatic immunity shielded many involved, rendering traditional avenues of justice ineffective. Meanwhile, public pressure mounted, forcing officials to act lest unrest spiral out of control. In response, Dubai launched an independent inquiry tasked with investigating allegations of misconduct among its elite. Critics dismissed the move as a PR stunt, arguing that true accountability would never materialize without external oversight. Supporters, however, saw it as a step toward meaningful change, even if incremental. Throughout this process, Layla remained steadfast, using her platform to advocate for systemic reforms. She called for stricter regulations governing private healthcare providers, mandatory reporting of infectious diseases among public figures, and increased protections for whistleblowers. Her efforts garnered widespread support, inspiring grassroots movements across the globe. Women began sharing their own stories of survival, united by a shared desire for justice. It was a reminder that behind every statistic lies a human face, and behind every tragedy, an opportunity for transformation. Which brings us back to you. Because uncovering the truth isn't just about assigning blame, it's about preventing future harm. As we continue exploring this case, consider the systems at play. Who benefits from secrecy? Who suffers when silence prevails? And what can we do to ensure voices like Layla's are heard, not silenced? Stay with me, because the story doesn't end here. In fact, it's far from over. If you have thoughts or questions, share them in the comments. I'm here to listen. Let's keep this conversation going, because together, we're stronger than any system designed to keep us quiet. The fallout from the Dubai scandal reverberated far beyond the city's borders, exposing fault lines in industries and societies worldwide. What began as a local tragedy soon morphed into a global reckoning, a stark reminder that power, privilege, and exploitation know no boundaries. But while headlines celebrated Layla Ahmed as a symbol of courage, the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. For every victory claimed, there were setbacks that tested her resolve, and the resilience of those who stood beside her. As the independent inquiry progressed, cracks began to show in its promise of transparency. Key witnesses mysteriously recanted statements, citing personal reasons, or outright disappearing altogether. Others reported receiving anonymous threats, their phones buzzing with chilling messages like, "Your family won't be safe if you talk." Even Dr. Elias Rahman, once poised to testify against his former patrons, suddenly withdrew, claiming he'd been misquoted in leaked recordings. The pattern was unmistakable. Fear still ruled supreme, silencing voices before they could fully emerge. For Layla, these developments felt like déjà vu. She'd seen this playbook before: delay tactics, intimidation, and carefully orchestrated distractions designed to dilute outrage until attention shifted elsewhere. Yet something had changed since the early days of her ordeal. This time, she wasn't alone. A growing coalition of activists, journalists, and survivors rallied around her cause, determined to hold the powerful accountable. Their efforts took many forms: investigative reports exposing hidden connections between officials and perpetrators, petitions demanding international intervention, even protests staged outside embassies to amplify pressure on Dubai's leadership. Together, they formed a formidable force, one that refused to let the story fade quietly into oblivion. But resistance came not only from within Dubai, but also from unexpected quarters abroad. As news of the scandal spread, Western corporations with ties to the region found themselves under scrutiny. Luxury brands, private jet companies, and hospitality chains, all staples of Dubai's elite lifestyle, faced boycotts and backlash over allegations of complicity. Some issued hollow apologies, pledging vague commitments to ethical practices. Others doubled down on denial, dismissing accusations as baseless rumors aimed at tarnishing reputations. Behind closed doors, however, boardroom discussions revealed a more troubling truth. Profits outweighed principles, and loyalty to lucrative partnerships often trumped moral responsibility. One particularly egregious example involved Sky Voyage International, a charter airline frequently used by Sheikh Tariq and his associates. Internal documents obtained by whistleblowers showed executives knowingly overlooked red flags, including suspicious passenger manifests and irregular flight routes. When confronted, CEO Marcus Langford dismissed concerns, arguing that ensuring client privacy was paramount, even if it meant turning a blind eye to potential wrongdoing. His stance sparked outrage among employees, several of whom resigned in protest, accusing the company of enabling abuse under the guise of discretion. It was a sobering reminder that complicity isn't always active, it can also manifest as willful ignorance. Meanwhile, Layla continued fighting battles on multiple fronts. Publicly, she championed policy reforms, advocating for measures like mandatory health screenings for individuals in positions of authority and stricter penalties for violations of medical confidentiality. Privately, she grappled with the emotional toll of reliving trauma day after day. Friends described her as both resilient and fragile, oscillating between moments of fierce determination and quiet vulnerability. During one particularly candid interview, she admitted, "There are nights I wonder if it's worth it, if anything will really change. And then I think about all the women who don't have a voice, and I remind myself why I started this fight." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless others to join the movement. From London to Los Angeles, support poured in from unlikely allies, celebrities using their platforms to raise awareness, tech entrepreneurs developing tools to protect whistleblowers, and grassroots organizers hosting fundraisers to support victims seeking legal recourse. Each contribution, no matter how small, added momentum to a wave of change that refused to be silenced. Yet progress remained uneven. While some governments implemented modest reforms, such as tightening regulations around private healthcare providers, others resisted, framing such measures as infringements on sovereignty. In Dubai itself, the inquiry dragged on indefinitely, bogged down by procedural delays and conflicting testimonies. Critics accused officials of stalling tactics, pointing out that key figures like Sheikh Tariq and Sheikh Amina remained conspicuously absent from public hearings. Supporters countered that patience was necessary, arguing that dismantling deeply entrenched systems required time and persistence. Both sides agreed on one thing, though: justice wouldn't come easily or quickly. Amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged from an unexpected source: young people. Across social media platforms, a new generation of activists leveraged technology to bypass traditional gatekeepers, sharing stories, organizing virtual protests, and holding institutions accountable in real time. Hashtags like #NoMoreSilence and #BreakTheCycle trended globally, sparking conversations about privilege, accountability, and systemic reform. Schools incorporated case studies based on the scandal into curricula, challenging students to examine ethical dilemmas and propose solutions. For the first time, it seemed possible, not inevitable, but possible, that meaningful change could take root. Still, questions lingered. How many more secrets lay buried beneath Dubai's sands? How many lives had been destroyed without anyone noticing or caring? And perhaps most importantly, could the world learn from this moment, or would history repeat itself once the spotlight dimmed? As months turned into years, the Dubai scandal began to fade from headlines, but not from memory. For those directly affected, the wounds remained fresh, their healing slowed by unanswered questions and unresolved grievances. Layla Ahmed, once at the center of the storm, found herself grappling with an uncomfortable truth: justice isn't always served in ways that satisfy. While some progress had been made, laws tightened, policies rewritten, the people who orchestrated the abuse largely escaped accountability. It was a bitter pill to swallow, one that forced her to confront the limits of courage in the face of entrenched power. The independent inquiry, initially hailed as a beacon of hope, ultimately delivered mixed results. After nearly 2 years of investigations, hearings, and testimonies, the final report acknowledged systemic failures but stopped short of naming high-profile individuals like Sheikh Tariq al-Mansoori or Sheikh Amina al-Farid. Instead, blame was diffused across vague entities, institutional shortcomings, cultural norms, and human error. Critics derided the findings as toothless, accusing officials of prioritizing optics over substance. Supporters, however, argued that even incremental change represented a step forward, a fragile foothold upon which future generations could build. For Layla, the report felt like betrayal wrapped in bureaucracy. She'd sacrificed so much: her career, her privacy, her peace of mind, to expose the truth, only to see it watered down into politically palatable language. Yet she refused to let anger consume her. Instead, she channeled it into action, transforming disappointment into determination. In the months following the inquiry's release, she launched Silent No More, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting survivors of exploitation and advocating for systemic reform. The initiative quickly gained traction, partnering with international NGOs, legal experts, and grassroots activists to create resources, raise awareness, and push for legislative changes worldwide. One of Silent No More's earliest successes came in the form of a global database tracking cases of misconduct among public figures. Modeled after whistleblower platforms used in corporate settings, the tool allowed victims to anonymously submit evidence without fear of retaliation. Within weeks of its launch, hundreds of entries poured in, shedding light on abuses ranging from sexual harassment to financial coercion. Journalists dubbed it the Pandora's box of privilege, highlighting how seemingly untouchable elites were finally being held accountable, not through courts or commissions, but through collective vigilance. Yet not everyone celebrated these developments. Powerful interests pushed back fiercely, deploying smear campaigns and legal challenges to discredit Layla and her allies. Social media trolls flooded comment sections with baseless accusations, labeling her a liar, opportunist, or worse. Anonymous op-eds appeared in major publications, questioning her motives and casting doubt on the credibility of other survivors. Even close friends urged her to step back, warning that prolonged exposure would only invite more hostility. But Layla stood firm, reminding doubters why silence had never been an option. "I know what they're trying to do," she said during a live stream viewed by millions. "They want me to disappear, to retreat into obscurity so they can pretend none of this ever happened. But I'm still here, and so are thousands of others who refuse to be erased." Her words struck a chord, galvanizing supporters and silencing critics, at least temporarily. Donations poured in, enabling Silent No More to expand its reach and impact. Schools adopted its educational materials, teaching students about consent, ethics, and the importance of speaking out against injustice. Corporations partnered with the organization to develop training programs addressing workplace misconduct. And governments consulted its research when drafting new laws aimed at protecting whistleblowers and holding abusers accountable. But perhaps the most profound effect of Layla's work was the ripple it created within communities. Women who'd spent decades hiding their pain began sharing their stories openly, breaking cycles of shame and isolation. Support groups formed organically, connecting survivors across continents and cultures. Art projects, podcasts, and documentaries emerged, amplifying marginalized voices and challenging societal norms. Slowly but surely, the narrative shifted, from victim blaming to empowerment, from secrecy to solidarity. Even so, scars remained. For every success story, there were countless others left unaddressed. Many victims continued to suffer in silence, lacking access to resources or fearing retribution. Others faced secondary trauma as institutions dragged their feet, forcing them to relive horrors repeatedly without resolution. Layla understood these realities intimately, carrying them as reminders of the work still needed. She often reflected on the paradox of progress, how victories could coexist with setbacks, how hope could thrive alongside despair. In 2022, 4 years after the scandal broke, Layla returned to Dubai, not as a pilot or whistleblower, but as a guest speaker at a conference on gender equality and human rights. Standing before an audience of policymakers, activists, and academics, she delivered a speech that would later be quoted in classrooms and boardrooms worldwide. When we talk about justice, we must remember that it's not just about punishing wrongdoers, it's about preventing harm, restoring dignity, and building systems that protect everyone equally. We cannot undo the past, but we can shape the future. And if we fail to act, if we allow fear or complacency to dictate our choices, then we become complicit in perpetuating the very injustices we claim to oppose. Her words resonated deeply, earning standing ovations and sparking renewed calls for reform. Yet as applause faded and cameras turned away, Layla knew the fight wasn't over. Systems designed to shield the powerful don't dismantle themselves overnight. They require constant vigilance, relentless advocacy, and unwavering resolve. She also knew she couldn't do it alone. Real change demanded collective effort, a chorus of voices united in purpose. As we reflect on Layla's journey, consider your role in shaping a better world. What truths will you refuse to ignore? And how will you ensure that no one else has to endure what she, and countless others, have suffered? The years following the Dubai scandal were marked by a paradoxical blend of progress and stagnation, a testament to both the power of collective action and the stubborn persistence of entrenched systems. For every policy reform enacted, there was another loophole exploited. For every survivor empowered to speak out, there were others silenced by fear or indifference. And for every moment of triumph, there was a reminder of how far society still had to go. Layla Ahmed became a living symbol of this duality, a woman who achieved extraordinary things yet bore the scars of battles fought and won only partially. Her nonprofit, Silent No More, grew into a global movement, its influence stretching far beyond what anyone could have imagined in its early days. By 2025, the organization had established chapters in over 30 countries, each tailored to address local challenges while adhering to universal principles of justice and equity. It wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing anymore, it was about creating spaces where survivors could heal, rebuild, and thrive. Counseling services expanded to include trauma-informed care. Legal clinics offered pro bono representation to individuals pursuing cases against powerful adversaries. Educational workshops equipped communities with tools to recognize and resist exploitation before it took root. Yet even as Silent No More flourished, Layla herself struggled to find balance. The weight of leadership, and the constant reminders of the horrors she'd endured, chipped away at her spirit. Friends noticed changes. Sleepless nights spent drafting proposals, bursts of anger directed at no one in particular, moments of quiet despair when she thought no one was watching. Publicly, she remained steadfast, projecting strength even when she felt anything but. Privately, however, she wrestled with guilt, the kind that whispered, "You survived when others didn't. What makes you worthy?" It was during one such low point that Layla reconnected with an unlikely ally. Nadia Hassan, the hotel manager whose story of harassment had briefly intersected with hers during the scandal. Unlike Layla, Nadia had chosen anonymity, retreating from public view after testifying behind closed doors. But when she heard rumors of Layla's struggles, she reached out, not with solutions, but with solidarity. Over coffee in a quiet cafe, they talked openly for the first time in years, sharing fears, frustrations, and fleeting hopes. That conversation reignited something in Layla, a sense of purpose rooted not in grand gestures but in small acts of kindness and connection. Inspired by their reunion, Layla began prioritizing self-care, leaning on a support network of friends, family, and fellow activists. She started journaling again, a habit she'd abandoned during the height of the scandal, using words to process emotions too raw for speech. Slowly, she rediscovered joy in simple pleasures. Sunrises over the desert, laughter shared with loved ones, the satisfaction of mentoring young advocates eager to follow in her footsteps. These moments didn't erase her pain, but they reminded her why she kept fighting. For a world where survival didn't demand sacrifice, where courage didn't come at the cost of sanity. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of her advocacy continued reshaping institutions worldwide. In Europe, lawmakers passed legislation requiring mandatory health screenings for politicians and public figures, citing Layla's case as precedent. In Asia, tech startups developed AI-driven platforms capable of detecting patterns of abuse in corporate communications, preventing scandals before they erupted. And in Africa, grassroots movements inspired by Silent No More successfully lobbied for stronger protections for domestic workers, many of whom faced similar vulnerabilities to flight attendants and pilots caught in exploitative systems. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurred within cultures themselves. Conversations once taboo, about consent, privilege, and systemic inequality, entered mainstream discourse, challenging deeply ingrained beliefs and behaviors. Schools incorporated lessons on bystander intervention and ethical decision-making into curricula. Media outlets shifted focus from sensationalism to solutions, amplifying survivor voices rather than exploiting them. Even industries notorious for complicity, like fashion and entertainment, began embracing transparency, recognizing that accountability wasn't just morally right, it was good business. Still, resistance persisted. Powerful elites adapted, finding new ways to evade scrutiny while maintaining their grip on power. Offshore accounts multiplied. Non-disclosure agreements evolved into ironclad contracts designed to silence dissent. Surveillance technologies advanced, enabling perpetrators to monitor potential threats with chilling precision. For every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps back, a sobering reminder that dismantling centuries-old structures required more than goodwill or good intentions. Against this backdrop, Layla often reflected on the nature of justice. Was it enough to expose wrongdoing, knowing full well that punishment might never follow? Could true healing occur without closure, or forgiveness without accountability? These questions haunted her, not because they lacked answers, but because they revealed the complexity of human morality. Justice wasn't binary. It existed in shades of gray, shaped by context, compromise, and choice. And so, she chose to focus on what she could control, empowering others to tell their stories, advocating for policies that protected the vulnerable, and reminding everyone involved, including herself, that perfection wasn't the goal. Progress was messy, imperfect, and often incomplete. But it mattered nonetheless. As the years rolled on, Layla Ahmed's name became synonymous with courage, a beacon of hope for those who dared to challenge systems designed to silence them. Her journey wasn't perfect, nor was it easy. She didn't dismantle every barrier or hold every perpetrator accountable. But she did something far more profound. She reminded the world that even in the darkest corners of privilege and power, light could still break through. That truth, no matter how buried, had a way of surfacing when enough people refused to look away. Today, Silent No More stands as a testament to what collective action can achieve. It's not just an organization. It's a movement, a living, breathing force driven by survivors, advocates, and allies committed to creating a safer, fairer world. Schools teach its principles. Corporations adopt its frameworks. Governments consult its research. And yet, Layla knows better than anyone that this work is never truly finished. Systems of exploitation are resilient, adapting to new challenges even as they're exposed. The fight requires vigilance, not just from leaders like her, but from ordinary individuals willing to speak up, stand firm, and demand change. For Layla, the scars remain, both visible and invisible. There are days when the weight of everything she's endured feels unbearable, when the voices of critics echo louder than the cheers of supporters. But then she remembers why she started this fight, not for fame or recognition, but for the countless women whose stories might otherwise go untold. For the flight attendants, hotel managers, pilots, and domestic workers who trusted her to amplify their voices. For the future generations she hopes will inherit a world where survival doesn't demand sacrifice. And so, she keeps going, one step at a time, one voice at a time. Which brings us back to you. Because uncovering the truth isn't just about assigning blame, it's about preventing future harm. Layla's story proves that no single person can dismantle injustice alone. It takes all of us, listening, learning, acting, and refusing to be complicit. So I ask you now, who will you stand up for? What truths will you refuse to ignore? How will you ensure that no one else has to endure what Layla, and countless others, have suffered? This isn't just her story anymore. It's ours. And it's far from over. Before you go, I need your help to keep this conversation alive. Stories like Layla's deserve to be heard, not just once, but repeatedly, until real change happens. If this narrative moved you, if it made you think or feel or question the systems around you, please hit that subscribe button. Your support ensures that we can continue sharing powerful, thought-provoking content that sparks dialogue and drives action. Better yet, join the discussion. Drop your thoughts, questions, or theories in the comments below. I read every single one and respond personally because your voice matters. Share this story with friends, family, or anyone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a community dedicated to uncovering truths and demanding justice. One last thing. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stories like these? They don't come around often. But when they do, I promise to bring them straight to you. Raw, real, and unfiltered. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And most importantly, thank you for refusing to stay silent. Until next time, take care, and let's keep fighting for a better tomorrow.